32 teams in 32 days. Welcome to the inaugural episode where for the next 32 days, with the help of a fan or media member from each of the 32 NFL teams, I will dive down deep into every single NFL team's offseason moves and potential draft plans. For the first episode, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let's welcome in Laurie Fitzpatrick of Jaguar Report and Jaguars Brawl. Follow her on Twitter at Laurie Fitzpatrick. Laurie, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself? How's it
I'm
going?
I'm doing great. Excited to get this thing on the road, and I don't think there's a better team to start with the team than the team that currently holds the number one overall pick. But before we talk about the Jags offseason moves, let's start with that number one overall pick. I think we all know who it's going to be. And as a Bengals fan, I remember last year before Joe Burrow was even announced as the pick, there was a sense from the fan base that, okay, this is the guy we've been needing all these years. He's going to come in here, change everything. What is the sense in the fan base right now around Trevor Lawrence?
They absolutely love him and hate everyone that is against him. It's already started. There's been a couple of guys, really big names out there, like Chris Sims and a couple other people who just are kind of against the whole Minshew mania that's going on right now in Jacksonville. So it's already something that's starting where we're against anybody that's against or well, I said Minshew, didn't I? Trevor Lawrence mania. So, anybody that's against Trevor Lawrence, even those big guys, we're all kind of gathering together and saying, hey, before the college football season ended, everybody was so high on Trevor Lawrence, and now everybody's kind of second guessing. So it's very interesting how the whole dynamic is turning as the draft approaches.
Yeah. So how excited are you? Because we all assume it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. Like, what's the sense from the fan base that you're getting, like the Jaguars fan base that you're getting of, okay, how excited are we that this guy is going to probably be our quarterback for the next 15 years?
It's at an all-time high. I would say it's about an 11. And it has a lot to do with Urban Meyer too. Because I don't think that he would even be in Jacksonville if it weren't for the Jaguars getting the number one overall pick. So, I would say it's just as high for it's more they're more excited for Trevor Lawrence, but Urban Meyer being there just puts a cherry on top of it all, you know?
Yeah. And let's talk about Urban Meyer. Like, he's back in coaching. And if you told me, I don't know, 2.5 years ago that he'd be coaching the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence in the NFL 2 years later, I would have told you that, yeah, you're absolutely crazy. When he first got hired about 2 months ago, what were your feelings on it, and how big do you think he's going to be for this team's potential success?
I think it's gonna be huge, mostly for the city of Jacksonville, and just around the league in general. Jacksonville isn't really a place that anybody wants to go, and they're always, at the bottom of the league in terms of, making jokes about, oh, it kind of like how the Browns were for the last 20 years. Like, let's make jokes about nobody ever wanting to sign there, and oh, Jacksonville's never going to be anything besides 2017. There's no respect. So the biggest thing is Urban Meyer coming in and making the logo and the emblem mean something. And he wants the free agents to want to go there. And it's just something that he's getting used to, with players just at Ohio State and the other places he was like just nagging at the bits trying to get on Urban Meyer's squad, and now it's a little bit different. He has to kind of make a case for himself against these free agents, and so it's kind of interesting, to have that angle on it. But I think the competitiveness overall is what they're excited about, and for Jacksonville to be a tough nosed city, unlike what it's been for the last 10-15 years.
Yeah, we all know culture wise, he's going to come in, change stuff based on where, the past couple coaching staffs were. He's going to come in and change that. Schematically, what do you think he brings to the current roster?
Well, for one, he's changing the defensive scheme from a 4-3, or from a 4-3 to a 3-4. So it's kind of exciting for him to kind of sign all these free agents, these outside edge rushers, because like he says, building from the outside, or building from the defensive line to the outside, is the most important. So I think he wants to get back to the hashtag Saxonville. for sure. He wants to have a lot of sacks, and that defensive front is going to be the main, like basically the main course. And Trevor Lawrence is going to be kind of like he's just not going to want to rely on them. He wants a stone cold defense, and hardcore, tough tacklers, and he wants those speedy guys too. So he's kind of taking all of the offensive players and really saying, okay, like this isn't the type of offense you're going to be used to running. So I think he's going to be throwing a lot of option in there, and he's going to be going. It's going to be all speed. So there's going to be some fancy mesh points. So he's going to maybe run like the pistol where, you're going to have somebody run across the line. Is it going to be a jet sweep? Is it going to be a toss? Is it going to be, a flick? We don't know. So I think that's going to be exciting too. Like kind of throwing in all the different, um, like, like ways, like which way is it going to go type of deal.
Yeah, and Trevor did that a whole lot at Clemson. That kind of goes underrated because he's one of the best throwers of the college football has ever seen. But, we saw in the first game against Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl last year in 2019, he ran for over 100 yards and kind of showed that part of his game on options, RPOs, stuff like that. It's to go along with his great arm talent. So mixing that with Urban Meyer's background of having track stars at quarterback and on the outside, having speedsters for tight ends, having athletic offensive tackles, it's certainly going to be very interesting to see not only what he brings on the defensive side of the ball, kind of getting back to Jacksonville, as you said, but also what he does offensively with, those different types of wrinkles that he can use with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. But let's talk about the offseason a little bit. It's safe to say Jacksonville started a bit slow in free agency. I mean, Jamal Agnew, Roy Robertson Harris, like who are those guys? Even though everyone should know who Roy Robertson Harris is, he's very good. But then we started getting into the good stuff. Malcolm Brown trade, Marvin Jones, Shaquille Griffin, to finish off a pretty solid couple days in free agency for Jacksonville, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say so. I think he was really building on depth, and that was important because he decided, that he was going to make a lot of changes. And to the whole coaching staff, he let go everyone except for the offensive line coach. So that's really interesting when it comes to your depth players, because the whole reason why they're a depth player is because those coaches like him. So he said, you know what, if those coaches aren't there, we're just going to get rid of a lot of guys. So I think a lot of those signings were depth guys. They were special teams. So yeah, it wasn't a big splash, a huge splash, but it's his first year too. So going back to like I said in the beginning, he's used to guys wanting to play with him, and yeah, he's still getting that now, but now it's more about money than it is about necessarily winning. So he has to kind of talk about the taxes and trying to get players to come to him. So it's a little bit of a change. So I think that was maybe why the splash wasn't as big as it was, day two as it was for day one. But I think the depth was the most important thing for him day one for sure.
Yeah, and it's not like trying to get 28-year-olds is a lot different than recruiting a 17, 18-year-old kid who wants to come to Ohio State, who wants to come to Utah, who wants to come to Florida, instead of having to bring a 26, 27-year-old who's already signed multiple contracts, who's already been to multiple teams, say, hey, come to Jacksonville, who's been at the bottom of the league for so long. And,
Yeah.
they had that AFC championship appearance a couple years ago, but other than that, just been a ton of bottom finishes in the AFC, towards the bottom of the standings in the entire league. And this guy coming in has to bring a change where people want to come down to Jacksonville
Yeah.
and
It
play for them.
No, and I think that's a big deal because there was a lot of draft picks that are starters on the Jacksonville team. So I think it's important for him, for the depth, to be guys that have been in the league for a while too. That's important to have, remember Calais Campbell coming in?
Mhm.
He was one of the biggest free agents at the time, and that literally changed everything because he was a guy that's been around, He played on the Arizona Cardinals starting defensive line for how long, and they were like a staple as a defense. So I think he knew how important that was for him to get, even though they weren't, huge names, but to get those guys that have been around for a little bit, like the Carlos Hyde, like Philip Dorsett, like Marvin Jones, like Roy Robertson Harris, those guys that are just gonna be those locker room and culture guys. to really set the tone.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with Harris because he was in Chicago for a while, and some of these good nose tackles, just no one knows who they are, but there are so many good ones, and he is included in that conversation. Have you watched any tape on him since he signed?
Yeah, so I've watched a lot of tape actually, and I've I've posted a couple of clips, like I've made like a couple threads for each free agent, and boy, is he huge. He's 6'7". So it's been like it's been awesome to see these players come from other teams that are just massive. And one was and not trying to change topics or anything, but Malcolm Butler was also a trade that happened. And he wasn't a free agent, but they made that trade for one of their 11 picks in the NFL draft. So he's also a big guy paired in with the Roy Robertson, but yeah, he's huge. He can throw guys around like it's nothing. So it's pretty interesting to see how well he can slide for being so big. And it's mainly for the run stop. And that's because the Jaguars finished like 29th or 30th in the league last year in run defense. So I think that was the main reason why they got him was for to be that big, nose type of player to kind of stop that run. And that's exactly what he's doing in the films that I see.
Yeah, you mentioned bringing over Malcolm Brown from New Orleans, and New Orleans had to cut and trade a bunch of players. They were in salary cap hell, and it was like they had all these players who they had to ship out, and Jacksonville took complete advantage and bringing in Malcolm Brown, another big body nose tackle to pair with Harris. And I think a lot of teams are doing this because the edge market is always going to be pretty high because of the need for the position. But I think teams know how deep this edge class is in the draft, and they're building up their interior so they can go out and draft one of these speed power edge rushers in April. So
Yeah.
I kind of had that feeling that Jacksonville was doing that, getting two big body nose tackles in free agency and kind of might go attack edge. I mean, not in the first round. Obviously, Chase on was your first round pick last year along with CJ Henderson, but could edge be another sneaky need for Jacksonville in second or third round this draft?
Yeah, I would say third. I would definitely say third because he really cares about that defensive line. I wish that it was more inside linebacker, but maybe that's why he got those two tackles. Because he hasn't mentioned linebackers not once in any interview, which is concerning to me. Because they have Miles Jack, who's a speedy guy, and like you said, like Chason's out there. So there's not really, they have the guy from the Browns. I don't know why. Schobert, Joe
Yeah.
Schobert. They have him as a middle linebacker, but I would kind of hope that they would want somebody, stronger than that, more of like a fridge type of guy. But yeah, I would say yes because he cares so much about the defensive line. I would say maybe around the third round is where they would kind of like attack somebody, maybe like a sleeper, something like that.
So they have two first round picks for Jacksonville, just like they did last year, one of which is going to be Trevor Lawrence. The other one comes in at 25. And unfortunately for the Jags, the Rams won a playoff game. It only dropped you guys a couple of
Yeah.
spots, but still. So pick 25. What are you thinking for that? Should they go offensive line? They did keep Cam Robinson via the franchise tag. Should they go wide receiver? I know they added a couple of receivers, some vet guys in the last week or so. But to say the least, there will be tons of options at pick 25. But as of right now, what are you leaning towards for that pick?
I'm It's tough because it really depends on who's there because they really need a receiving tight end, but they also don't want to reach because like after Kyle Pitts, like it kind of drops off a little bit. So it's really going to be who's available, and I think it's going to be the best player available type of scenario. I would like them to go safety. Um just because they really don't have a huge player at safety like a huge guy or like a big player type of guy that can make plays back there in the safety position. So they I think that they should go safety or tight end. Um But, it really depends because if there's a speedy guy that's a wide receiver that's out there, he could totally go there because he's been stressing in his pressers, speed, speed, speed,
Yeah.
speed. So he's been saying a lot. I think there's gonna be a surprise, at 25, from Urban Meyer for sure.
So back to free agency a little bit. Marvin Jones, I think, was a very underrated signing. Uh, the Jags got some veteran presence right here with Marvin. What were your thoughts on the move bringing him in from Detroit?
Liked it. I wasn't like over the top about it, but it was probably because the money kept going up for all these other guys. Like maybe Galladay just wasn't someone that they thought was going to be reachable. So that's why they went with Marvin. I mean, it just I just thought maybe they would get someone a little bit younger, but if you look at the wide receiver core right now for the Jaguars, they don't have really any older guys at all. So it makes complete sense. And Galladay hasn't been in the league for very long. So like, why add another guy that's super young when you have Colin Johnson and Chenault, and then you got DJ Chark, who really isn't that old either. So I think it had a lot to do with his competitiveness, and just, him not the price tag not being so crazy.
And then Shaquille Griffin. Some say they overpaid, but I mean, look at the corner market. It's big. Teams need corners, and he's one of the good ones. So where does he slide in next to CJ Henderson? And overall, where does the cornerback room shape out to be at the moment in Jacksonville?
Yeah, it's gonna be CJ, it's gonna be Griffin, and it's gonna be Sidney Jones. So those three are gonna be the main guys. They're even holding on to Trey Herndon, who I'm not a huge fan of. But it was only because he was a starting corner, and he's not a starting corner. So I'm excited to kind of see him step in and maybe help out. But those are the four main guys that are right now in there. And I think CJ did a really good job last year in the minimum amount of games that he played. So
Yeah, so they have 5 picks in the top 65. A great opportunity to revamp the roster with young talent. Is this the most important offseason for the Jags that you can remember?
yeah, absolutely. I would say 2016 was the only other one. Uh, but they made a much bigger splash in free agency. So I'm a little nervous because I thought they would have gone a little bit bigger. But I'm thinking about year two. I'm thinking that they're thinking about year two. Because this year is kind of like we can make a huge splash because nothing that the Jacksonville is putting out there on the field is anything like any film that is out there right now. So that in itself is going to be it's going to be something that's going to help them because NFL is a copycat league. And if you see what other teams are doing, then you can defend it. But if you have something that nobody has seen before, then it's gonna be really good no matter what. But year two is gonna be the crucial year, and I think that is when they're gonna go a lot bigger in free agency for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're gonna have cap space next year because yeah, they signed some of these guys, but not a whole lot of star power on the books this
Yeah.
year. Also next year, so they'll have cap space. They had the most cap space in the entire league this year, or is
Yeah,
that
they did.
top?
Yeah,
Okay,
they
and
did at the top for sure. It was actually a huge gap. It was awesome to even see that them at the top. We're the top of something. Woo!
yeah. So next year, same thing. Like year two is the mold for NFL. Like Russell Wilson made a Super Bowl year two. Lamar Jackson broke out in year
Yep.
two. I'm forgetting so many
Yep.
others.
But it doesn't matter. Those two
Mahomes
are
in
the
year
most
two.
important. Yeah, true. But like Trevor Lawrence,
Yeah,
and you think about, you think about the Ravens quarterback right now, and then you look at the Seahawks, and the Seahawks offensive coordinator is now with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So they see, T Law kind of having that Trevor type. I mean, they see Trevor kind of having that Russell Wilson type of career. So it's kind of awesome that you mentioned those two guys because that's basically Trevor Lawrence, like in a nutshell is running and having that arm too. So it's pretty year two. You're right. Year two is going to be where it's at. That's what I think is going to be the most important time. It's free agency next year rather than free agency this year.
yeah, and even so, like it's not like they just sat with their hands tied this year and did nothing. Like they brought in veteran players. They're clearly building a culture down in Jacksonville for the what feels like the first time in forever.
Yeah.
But so let's kind of talk about the current roster. There was a ton of young players that came in last year. I mean, production from Laviska Shenault, Colin Johnson towards the end of the year, obviously Chase on. I love the selection of Ben Barch, even though he didn't play much. Which one of these young guys, maybe even someone I didn't name, is set to break out this season?
Ooh. Set to break out. I would definitely someone you didn't mention, Josh Allen.
Okay.
Or did you mention him
No, I
just
didn't.
now?
Third
Yeah,
year
Josh
player.
Allen. Yeah, I think he's gonna be one of the guys that really breaks out. But another young guy I could see is CJ Henderson. Because to me, he's kind of like a Jalen Ramsey and AJ Boye kind of put together. Because he's not so like limby, like where his limbs are super long, like Jalen Ramsey, how he kind of get his hand in there. But he has the composure and like the tightness. But it's also loose in a way, like at the cornerback position, like AJ Boye. Like he has that composure. He's not gonna get beat on the double moves. It just seems like he has his head and his like aesthetics there. Like this is gonna be his year that he breaks out, especially if you have another corner on the other side. That's definitely going to help you. You know, as a rookie, you're going to get targeted, and that's the best thing that can happen is for you to get targeted. Um, as a young corner trying to prove yourself because then they're not going to want to throw to either side. So I think CJ is going to be a breakout guy. Josh Allen, and then on the offensive side of the ball, Laviska Shenault is going to be. I think he's going to be someone that's going to be really scary because he seems to bounce off of tackles all the time. It seems like nobody can ever wrap him up. So I think he can be someone, especially like for the quick slants, and things like that. Instead of like check downs to the running back, I think it's going to be like Jacksonville's going to check down to Laviska Shenault on the outside. You know.
Yeah. So last thing before I let you go, talk about the offensive line a little bit because you actually tweeted earlier this morning about the offensive line. How much room because they finished what 12th, 13th around there in efficiency in pass blocking, run blocking, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
where do you think that their line stands right now? Because I don't think they're like the Chargers, the Bengals, who like have their star quarterback and don't have any protection because they have Cam Robinson, they have Andrew Norwell. So where do you think the line stands right now, and how much room for improvement is there?
I think there's little room for improvement. And that, that may be at like the right tackle position because right now you got Jawan Taylor there, and he came from the Bengals, I believe, a couple years ago. So like, he's I wouldn't say a question mark, but it's really all about depth because the cohesiveness is already there because these guys have been playing together. It's basically the same line from 2017, and that's what I tweeted. And so like the cohesiveness is the most important part, and I think the only reason why that maybe they, regressed a little was only because that the quarterback position was all over the place. So, and like you said, it's kind of hard to judge the offensive line efficiency when you have a quarterback who's running around and taking sacks. So it's hard to tell how effective and efficient they are. But I don't think they have much room. Like of course anybody can always get better. You can always get better guys, but I don't think it's a place of like huge need. I think they're going to go maybe two or three offensive linemen in this draft, which is going to be great because, it takes time to build a cohesiveness. So I think they're going to get a couple guys because this line right now has been together for a little bit. So they will target it in the draft, but I don't think it's an absolute need. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh man, that this is the position that they need to get. Oh my God. Like I don't think it's gonna be a point of emphasis, but I think they're definitely gonna pick up two or three even like really big. They may even trade up for a couple. I could definitely see them doing that because Trevor Lawrence is gonna be the baby of the franchise, man. Like you gotta protect that guy.
Yeah, and we all know the NFL stands for not for long. Like these, especially in the trenches, these guys get injured, they get banged up, and constantly bringing in young players can never hurt, no matter how young they are, no matter how raw they are. Bring in those young players, especially up front. But lots of good stuff here. Talked about the offseason a little bit, talked about Urban Meyer, and of course, the golden boy, Trevor Lawrence. But Laurie, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me, man. I had such a good time and pretty fun kind of going over what we just acquired in Jacksonville, and it's kind of exciting to have the number 1 pick. Thank you so much, man.
So make sure to follow Laurie on Twitter at Laurie Fitzpatrick. Follow me at Jake Sirkus. Thank you guys for listening. Catch you guys in the next one.